Just to give everybody a little context of GE Healthcare. Um, you may know GE Healthcare as a medical device company, and I have probably seen our devices within hospitals or doctors' offices that you have visited. But we've been undergoing a digital transformation into a true health tech firm that specializes in building and deploying AI applications at scale across healthcare and life science needs. Today, we have more than 50 AI applications that are generating 50 million plus data elements a day across 4 million of our devices within 160 plus countries that are seamlessly embedded in the workflow. So, we've been able to achieve this by making the decision and investment about 5 years ago to build what we call the Edison ecosystem. This is an end to end set of solutions and capabilities that lets you design, construct, and seamlessly deploy AI at scale, which includes data acquisition, the regulatory and compliance processes behind that. So, this investment has been instrumental in us developing capabilities around global data acquisition that will give us the volume, veracity, and variety of data that's needed, the data science expertise, intelligent application development, software engineering and data architecture, and then AI services that include what we call imaging fabric, workflow orchestration, security, etc., which enable the secure de-identification of data, and then be able to deploy AI seamlessly to the point of care for every customer. So when we pause and think about those four critical areas that you saw on the previous screen, that Edison ecosystem aims to address, we realized very early on that data or content was an extremely critical prerequisite in this recipe. We've done some initial research that has shown us that how much data is generated across healthcare, and as a matter of fact, over 2.3 exabytes of data was generated in 2020 alone. However, that data is still siloed, and there isn't a consistent way to acquire or standardize that data, and data being crucial in the advancing of these innovations and being often inaccessible at the point of care. So part of our work is advancing the Edison ecosystem is to ensure that we are gathering all sorts of data, including imaging data, monitoring data, EMR or HIS or RIS data that is both GDPR and HIPAA compliant, and then leveraging that data to build intelligent application solutions that are deployed again at this point of care when it's most needed, and also to facilitate innovations in other businesses such as life sciences. So, as I mentioned, one of the business segments in the life sciences market that the ecosystem, Edison AI ecosystem wants to tackle or serve is the pharma industry. Now, there are a couple of core issues that's faced by the pharma industry, which limits the quality of patient outcomes and profitability when it comes to clinical trials that forms the basis of any new therapeutic treatment being developed. So I want to highlight three such issues, right? One is the delayed clinical trial. Now, this happens either due to not meeting enrollment deadlines or related to challenges recruiting patients that are outside of academic care settings or rare diseases. Number two is related to deploying clinical algorithms that the pharma companies have built at scale to aid the discovery of undiagnosed patient populations or even be able to provide clinical decision support at the point of care that can unlock commercial opportunities for them. And number three is related to the management of data that is necessary to ensure FDA compliance using what they currently use is outdated technology and processes. So, in order to address these core issues that I just outlined, the Edison Digital Pharma Solutions is envisioning a portfolio of wing to wing services to ensure the best approach to deploy these algorithms that the pharma companies have been developing across GE's large install base that's basically comprised of hundreds of global hospitals. Now, this starts with a unique approach to AI using advisory services where we ensure we fully understand the pharma business needs and then establish a solid foundation for successful deployment of these AI innovations. Then we ensure that we have the appropriate data sets that are based on the volume, veracity, or variety to ensure that the algorithms that are being deployed are being trained with the best possible outcome in mind. Finally, we are able to deploy and manage the performance of those innovations. Now, natural language processing plays a very crucial role in the middle piece that you see, which is real world data, right? To ensure that the data that's being sourced from our data partners is meeting the criteria that's been established by our pharma customers. So, digging a bit deeper into this real world data offering, it essentially comprises of four steps, namely data sourcing, where the appropriate data provider from a list of data partners that GE has is identified that would meet these pharma data requirements. Second important step is data acquisition, where purpose built tools are being leveraged to extract the data per established spec. Now, this is where NLP is heavily used, as you might all know. The data at provider sites are very messy, with a patient's diagnosis and subsequent treatment is being captured in the form of unstructured narratives scattered among multiple documents. Now, when you sift through such data to identify a cohort that meets a certain data spec, it becomes very challenging, especially if it's done manually. Now, this is a sweet spot where NLP technologies such as Smart NLP for healthcare from JSL can reduce that manual review that's involved. It still doesn't take the human out of the picture yet, but can greatly aid in speeding up that review that's needed. So this is then followed by a data QA step where the quality is assessed and the data is refined towards prepping it for customer delivery. Again, NLP plays a significant role here to ensure that the data sets have been de-identified of any PHI per established standards such as safe harbor provisions, set by HIPAA or other GDPR standards. And then finally, there is this highly governed process to deliver the data to the customer for final review and approval. Now, in this context, when we talk about our initial project that we engaged with JSL on, we were presented with the challenge of selecting a certain set of patients that exhibited a set of symptoms that were attributable to their risk factors such as tobacco use, alcohol consumption, etc. And then they were prescribed for a certain radiology procedure or procedures that then led to certain findings and a final conclusion that was deemed by the radiologist. Now, folks who are unfamiliar with radiologist narratives, the radiologist typically has to report any anomalies present or absent. Absent is also important for each anatomy that they would potentially see in the images that are presented at the time of read. Now, there is also quite a bit of ambiguity in the way that some of these findings are phrased in the report, right? So it's not just a yes or a no or a present or an absent. It also phrases that are presented as possible, could be, etc. So the pipeline that we co-created with JSL enabled us to extract a structured representation of pertinent clinical entities, relationships between these entities, and then a normalized representation of these entities. This was then used to enable a much more accurate down selection of the most appropriate data cohort from the rather larger set of radiology reports that we started with, that we procured from the data partner site. So I would like to turn over the next part of the presentation to Hasham from Johnson Labs, who partnered with our GE data scientists to talk through the technical details of this NLP pipeline that we built. And I look forward to answering any of your questions during the follow-up Q&A session. Over to you, Hasham.
Thank you, Rajesh. Now we move towards the actual problem, the solution that we built, and how do we, formulate that problem. So now that we know that we have the radiology reports for patients that exhibit a certain type of symptoms, the first thing we do is data gathering. The data set is basically pretty simple. These are radiology reports. But the main thing is that that these reports originally come from hospitals, from providers, from different domains. So there was a high bias in the data. What we mean by that is, for example, we took data from 4 different hospitals, and each hospital has a very specific type or format of reporting. Those radiology reports are very basic, and they have a fixed format, which that would mean that they do not incorporate as much variance in them as we would like, because if the reports are only of 4 or 5 types, and we use that limited data set, then we lose on variance. And what that would eventually mean is, if we build a system if we train models on those reports, then those models would not do as well in the real world, where we would get a variety of report types. So what we did for that was we gathered more data. We got some more reports from the site, and we included in the data to see if to get more variance. So once we have the data and we have a problem statement, the next thing we do is we prepare annotation guidelines. What that means is, for example, we have a problem statement that we want to extract problem. Given a radiology report, we want to extract symptoms, we want to extract procedures, we want to extract body parts, we want to extract values, measurements, all of these things. So for these, first we agree on developing an annotation guidelines, because we would need to annotate those real world reports that we would use to train models. So the annotation guidelines were very extensive because we have more than 100 different types of entities to extract. So we prepared those using second layer NER, first layer NER, assertion, all of these things. It was quite a complex annotation guideline. But what it essentially helps us is with annotating the reports themselves. For example, if we have if we have 2 or 3 different annotators working to annotate those reports, then that would mean that we would get a bias. To minimize all of these things, we first developed these annotation guidelines. We spend a considerable amount of time developing these, so we know that each and every entity is extracted in the right way, and we do not have biases depending on who is annotating them. So that's the first step of agreeing and developing annotation guidelines. For the annotation themselves, we used JSL's, Johnson Labs annotation lab. It's a tool that we have. So in that, for example, we have 2, 3 because we don't only want to extract entities. We want to extract relations between entities. Like this body part, for example, in the image in front of you, it says the chest. CT scan was performed on the chest. So chest is a body part, but the procedure is CT scan. So we need to link them together. For that, we use relation linking. This is part of the annotation guideline, which we agreed on previously. So this is how at first level, we extract entities. For example, CT scan is an imaging test. Chest is a body part. IVC is a drug ingredient. March 22 is a date. So this is the first level. These are simple annotations or simple entities. Then we have second layer annotations. What that means is, if you notice that the CT scan has a second layer of annotation that says target. What that signifies is in these reports, we want to actually get what is the primary procedure being done in this report. So CT scan was a primary procedure. So we label that as target. We use this information when we try to train the model to identify which was the primary procedure in this report. For example, then we also want to extract gender. For that, we have 2 solutions for that. One is we extract gender as part of the, just like a 69-year-old female. So we extract female as a gender and then check or parse it to see if it is a male or female, or we simply create a checkbox below this report, and the annotator can just check. So if the report is about a female or a male, that way we can train a binary classifier. Then we have assertion annotations. Assertion simply means if an entity is present or not, if it is absent but it is mentioned. For example, multi-slice non-contrast. So contrast was labeled as a drug ingredient, but it was absent because of non. So this way we basically segregate which entity belongs to which class or which person. Sometimes there could be a family history as well. So for that, we would assert that as family history. We would not associate that with the primary person in the report. The fifth thing is we have relations, like I already explained, that we need to link each and everything together at the end. So we create relations between entities. So we had roughly 500 reports in the training set. that yeah 500 reports, and we annotated all of them using this fashion to get annotated data that we can use to train models. These reports had some other problems, other challenges as well. For example, there was noise in data. What that means is sometimes there were you know measurements that were really noisy in the sense that they would not contain proper spacing in between them. Sometimes they would be backs, new carriage returns or other new line characters out of scope in the data. So these are normal noise in the data that we usually experience. But the main thing was that there was some tabular data as well in the reports themselves, and that table was simply represented by a tab space table. So, and that did not need to be annotated, rather it was to be extracted as a whole, because it's tabular data. We do not want to process that as an unstructured data. Then sometimes we also get malformed reports, like very short reports or reports that are incomplete. So these are again normal noise that we come across. So the after we have the annotations, we train NER, assertion, and relation extraction models out of those annotations. In the end, the solution that we build, we have a couple of layers in that solution. For example, at the first level, we first try to extract the demographics of the patient. What is their age, gender, if any address is mentioned, the address of the provider or any other thing, existing conditions. This is extracted using the help of assertion, because if there is a problem, but that problem has a temporal context of the past, then we say that it is an existing condition. It's not a finding of this report. Then we segregate conditions, problems, and procedures from allergies. For example, if the person has allergy from a specific type of treatment or drug, so we want to extract that firsthand before we proceed with any other thing. So these things are extracted as a separate layer that is specific to the patient itself. After that, we basically try to parse the report. So we have a long unstructured piece of data, a complete report. And at first level, we try to identify procedures and findings and their associated body parts, and then we link them. For example, given a report, it says that this report is about CT scan. We would first try to identify the primary procedure, that is CT scan. We would then try to see which are the findings that are in result of this CT scan. For example, if it says a cyst was seen in the CT scan, we would say, okay, these two things are linked. But cyst where? What's the location of that cyst? We try to find a body part for it and then relate them. So the way this works is we first try to find each and every entity and then relate them, rather than finding an entity and then looking for things that are related to it. No, first we find each and everything and then we relate. For example, pleural effusion, CT scan also revealed pleural effusion. This pleural effusion was seen in lung and left lobe. So left would be laterality, and lobe is the sub part of that lung. For example, the pleural effusion has a measurement as well, can cross 9.8 millimeters. So we extract the measurement, the actual values, and the unit. What is the unit of that value? We extract date and link that to the primary procedure, that this procedure took place on this specific date. Not only that, this, like I explained earlier, that this CT scan was performed on chest. So, and what is the technique for this CT scan, for example, if it is a multi-slice? Not only that, because these were very domain-specific radiology reports, we also had to extract scores, like coronary calcium score, and what is the value for it, and link them to the primary procedure that has been performed in the report. So compiling it all, we first try to find what was happened in the report, which is basically a procedure, right? Because a procedure happened, a test happened, and that test revealed a lot of things. Then we look for what it revealed and where it revealed. So say stem fusion is what was the result of that procedure, and those problems have some body parts. Those body parts have lateralities. There could be measurements associated with the problems as well. So this is how we link each and everything together. So previously we had an unstructured piece of data coming in, and the system processed that data, and we have a structured output at the end. We also try to see temporal context, which is which is what I was talking about in the previous slide, when we say that if there is anything related to the past, if that is, then we say, okay, it's in the past, we don't link with this, we treat that separately. Then at last we do entity standardization, or entity resolution, which we call, basically it's basically assigning codes to the concepts that we see. For example, CD scan has a very specific CPD code, so we come up with 3 different types of code that we want to include. We want to get the CPD code for the procedures, we want to get ICD codes for the problems like perfusion, cyst, or any other thing. Not only that, we also want to get SNOMED codes for body parts. So at the end, we have, apart from the from the raw text that we have, we also have proper codes associated with them. So we use that using we do that using entity resolution, entity resolver models, which have dictionaries of ICD, CPDs built into them, and they look for closest text match to try to come up with the best code for that specific type. All of these codes, ICD, CPD, SNOMED, have specific models for better accuracy. So this was the processing of the core report. Then we also had another solution that is for de-identification, in which we want to de-identify PHI information in the reports, because these reports are real-world reports and they contain information that is not fit for sharing, like names, addresses, institutions, all of that. So we build another auxiliary endpoint or solution in which you pass in a full-fledged raw report. We de-identify them. In this case, we chose the de-identification policy as masking. So any report coming in would get, we would try to identify names and all of these things, and then we would mask them instead of obfuscation. So they can be shared downstream with any other third provider or third party. Then after we built all of these solutions, we did some extensive testing, and then we came across some edge cases or some scenarios in which we were losing out on some information. For example, the noise that I was earlier referring to, we were missing on measurements that were malformed, where the dots were not properly placed, and which didn't have proper units. So we did some data augmentation. What that means is we try to make the data more noisy before training the model, so that the model incorporates some of that noise and is more robust. This is basically reversal to the other thing, where we pre-process the data, clean it before passing to the model. Because the number of reports were not that high to begin with, it made more sense to actually incorporate more noise in the training data itself, so that the model is more robust, rather than cleaning the data and feeding it to the model. So this is one enhancement that we did. Also, we noticed that because it was an extensive pipeline comprising of NER, assertion, relation extraction, entity resolution, a lot of steps, and then we have to link each and everything together. It was taking a lot of time. For example, a couple of seconds for any report. So we basically did benchmarking and some profiling, where each step, in which we check what is the time taken for each step, and then we try to reduce execution time by making the pipeline simpler, or by removing any back-to-back function calls, all of these things to get to reduce the average time taken to process a single report. At the end, we basically package all of this solution in containers, and we keep them separate. The reason for that is, for example, the resolver models, the models that are that take in an entity like a problem and predict CPD or ICD codes. Those are heavy models, and we do not want to merge them with the light models, because if any API crashes, we don't lose out on full functionality. For this, we use Docker containers, and we build an orchestration platform around it using Kubernetes to basically manage all of these containers. And we have internal calls between these separate containers. So for example, we have the main API container, which would get request from the client side. Then that container or that API would send a request to the NER or the assertion container, which would get all the entities, all the assertion labels and relations. Then once we get them, we process them in the main API. Then we aggregate all the results and send and make another request to another container or another API that would get us codes for all the things that we have identified. So this is how we create a modular structure with less coupling and more modularity for improved memory utilization as well as robustness. Because this whole process contained a lot of expertise from different domains. For example, we wanted people that had domain knowledge. We wanted people that were good in DevOps. We wanted people that were good in data science. We wanted input of the main stakeholders to see where to see if the solution is actually delivering on what is promised. So we had multiple stakeholders, including domain experts, people who know about radiology reports, data scientists, product experts. Those were the people who were actually overseeing the overall project and agreeing if the goals are being met or not, and data engineers for DevOps. So that's pretty much it. Thank you, and any questions, we're happy to answer.